Hello, everybody. This is Brian Ankney with Auto Success Magazine. I really appreciate y'all taking the time to join us today for this webinar. We're going to be discussing connecting with customers after the close. Everybody knows the trends in our industry, and now more than ever, it's very important to establish relationships with your customers and keep them coming back. My guest today is Brian Schmid from VinSolutions. Before we get the webinar started today, a couple things I'd like to share with you. We are going to do questions and answers during the webinar, or at the end of the webinar, but I would like for you to put your questions in as we go. That way I'll take notes, and when they come in, and I'll know what screen that we were on, and that way I can help to, let Brian know, when you ask a question, so we can address your question and get you the answers that you'd like. Now, how do you ask questions? Depending on what type of device you're using, it works differently. It's pretty simple and straightforward on a laptop, desktop, tablet. You've got a pane down the right side of your screen. Near the bottom it says questions. You click on the plus, type in the question, hit enter, and the question is submitted. Now, if you're on a mobile device, it's a little more tricky. You either have, and it varies from Apple to Android and even the different manufacturers from Android. So you either have a header, a footer, or a picture frame around your screen. Somewhere in there, you'll see a question mark. You click on the question mark, and it'll open up a screen for you to type in your question. Now, depending on the device, some of them will let you swipe, and that just goes away, and you go back to the webinar. Other ones you'll see in that pane, or in your picture frame, or on your header or your footer, you'll see what looks like a flat screen desktop monitor. If you click that, it'll take you back to the webinar. Now, we have had people in the past that have sent me emails saying they got kicked out when they did different things on a smartphone. Just keep in mind that the same link that you used to join us and the same phone number that you used to dial in, both of those will work again. So just go back to that email, and you can come right back in. Now, one more thing before we get started today. Auto Success Webinars is a group on Facebook. If you haven't joined yet, please do. In that group, it's a place for you to let me know if there's a topic you'd like to have covered, or there's somebody that you would like to see as a guest. Let me know. You can also message me on Facebook or send me an email. Call me. Whatever. If there's something you'd like to see, let me know, because I will do my best to bring it to you. Now, in the group Auto Success Webinars, you can interact with Auto Success. You can interact with the speakers. But the most important benefit is you can interact with each other. You're going to learn on this webinar and all of our webinars, you're going to learn some complex ideas and ways to increase your business and improve your business, but none of them are flipping a switch. And so some of these changes, they might take a week, might take a month, some might take a year or more. So I invite you to share your successes and failures with each other, share good ideas, and help each other along the way to implement these changes in your business. With all that being said, Brian, I would like to give you the floor. Take it away, my friend.
Thanks, Brian. So connecting to the customer after the close. This is a really exciting topic for me. I have always believed that marketing should act as a personal service to the consumer. And it does that through communications that they're relevant, so they're meaningful to the recipient, they're authentic, they're real, and they're timely. They come when the consumer wants them. And when they do those three things correctly, they end up acting almost as a personal assistant for the recipient. They show them things they're interested in from companies that they want to do business with. And it's exciting for me to dive into that I had to do that. Brief background, I've been running CRM-driven campaigns and communications for about 11 years. I got into the automotive industry through Napa Auto Parts. They were my first big automotive client. I did communications and packaging and sales training for them, sales product training. I did that before I got in with VinSolutions about 5 years ago. When I started with Vin, I worked with dealerships to run direct campaigns primarily. So email, direct mail, and some website material. So over that time, over those 5 years, I worked with hundreds of dealerships and done thousands of communications and campaigns. And what's been really interesting and exciting is to see how that communication has changed, not just over the last 5 years, but over the last 3 or even the last year, and the challenges that dealerships are going to be facing and how they're impacted by those changes. So the challenges that we're going to address today and on why these changes in communication style are so important is for the last several years we've seen these year-over-year increases in new car sales. And research from us and from Cox Automotive, our parent, are indicating that these years are probably going to be over, where we're not going to continue to experience this huge volume and record-setting sales. We need to look at how to bridge that revenue gap coming up. We're going to look at primarily doing that through service revenue. The other challenge that we're facing is, as I mentioned, your customers' expectations, what they want from you and what they expect from you are changing. They're not the same as they were 5 years ago, and they're continuing to change very rapidly. Really more rapidly, I think, than a lot of people expected. So 60% of our customers expect more from us now than they did just 1 year ago. So if we stop and think about this for a minute, what that really means is if you're doing now what you did a year ago and it hasn't changed, you're just as good as you were a year ago, you're actually losing ground. If we're not advancing, if we're not continually improving, we're not standing still, we're losing. And this thought process, this doesn't apply just to communications. This applies to the entire customer experience and how they interact with us. And if you're already sick of hearing about the phrase customer experience, I know it's been kind of a big buzzword lately. I've got some bad news for you. This one's going to be around for a while. This is a trend that we're going to see carrying for years. We expect by 2020 that customer experience is going to be the primary driver in how consumers pick who they do business with. Beyond price, beyond feature, it's going to be that experience. It matters for us. It matters for dealerships because the average car dealership could generate an extra $106,000 just in annual profit by making that customer experience a top priority. That extra increase in profit, that's going to come from repeat business, both in terms of repeat service and repeat purchases, so sales. Retention, which is driven by that customer experience and satisfaction, is going to be a huge profit driver for us as we move into the next few years. So we talked a little bit about those their experience. They want more. Customers are expecting more, and about why it matters. But what exactly is it that they're expecting? A few different things. They expect that you now communicate to them via their preferred channel. So you talk to them how they want to be spoken to, through the channel they want to be spoken to. They expect that communication is personalized for them. It demonstrates that you know who they are, that you have a relationship with them, and that you know something about them. And increasingly, we're seeing a demand that businesses are socially responsible and have a community involvement. That's being driven largely by the millennial generation as it ages. And although it's not necessarily relevant to us yet, the generation behind them, we've seen this mirror, it's called cause marketing, over the last decade. And that's where you tie in your business and your beliefs with a charity that you support. So you see it with like Yoplait yogurt does the lids, the pink lids, and then you buy that and it donates money to breast cancer. So that cause marketing, that notion, that didn't exist back in the early 90s, and now it's a billion-dollar industry. So that idea of being socially responsible and involved, that's not going to go away either. At the end of all of this, what really our consumers want is they want a beneficial relationship, something that's, yes, good for them, but good for the business and the community they're involved with too. And what we're going to talk about today and address is that post-sale relationship and how we need it to evolve. So why did we pick this topic? We pick a lot of our topics because maybe somebody asked for it, or it's trending, or I just happen to think it's cool. We had a very concrete reason, a very specific reason for picking this one, and it's because 64% of dealerships are not communicating regularly with their customers after the sale. And regularly here is the key. Everyone sends out, at least at some level, some kind of follow-up or reminder or future sales promotion. But it's that regularity and that relevancy that we need to talk about today. So we picked this topic because we know it's a major problem and that we need to solve it. The consequences of not following up regularly are pretty severe. You're missing out when you don't follow up on all the benefits of customer retention. Customer retention is so important. It's cheaper, first of all, than acquiring new customers. But retained customers are more profitable. You see more profit through increased service revenue and through repeat sales. Almost as importantly, when you retain customers and build that relationship, you start to learn about what it is they individually want and how they prefer to be communicated with. When you gather that information and you start to act on it, you can leverage it for more referrals or higher online ratings on things like Google or Yelp reviews, and ultimately you'll start to see increased CSI scores. So as you learn more about your customers and what they want and how they want to be communicated with, you'll be able to deliver a better tailored service, a better experience, and that's going to lead to higher satisfaction for you. Now, customer satisfaction and retention is important because just a 5% increase in retention is going to lead to a 75% increase in profit through, as I mentioned, repeat business, sales, and service. And it's that profit bump that is going to carry us past the sales slumps that we're expecting coming. And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for that 5% increase in retention. And we're going to take a look at how we can use these post-sale communications to get us there. So when communicating, and this applies not just to post-sale, but really any time, there's really three factors at play that combine to make a good communication. We're going to talk about using the right channel, so the method we communicate, via email or social, etc. We're going to talk about the timing, how to get the timing right for your communication, and we'll look there not just at frequency, so how often, but at literally what time of day or what day of the week. And we'll look at how you get your message right. This is probably, in my opinion, the most challenging and largest topic, but it's the one we're going to have to focus most on getting right over time. So let's start by taking a look at finding that right channel and what it means. What's the right channel for us, for your dealership? And it's a problem because there is just an overwhelming number of options here. If you're talking direct communications, you've got email, you've got messaging apps, text, mailers, the phone call. If you look at indirect communications, you're talking about, right now, social is the big one, so we've got Facebook and Twitter, but I think the underutilized ones, Instagram and even Snapchat. Which one of these is right for you? And the honest answer there is it doesn't matter which one's right for you. It's what's right for your customer. The big advice here is to be where your customers are. If you want to use email but your customers don't, then don't use email. And vice versa, if they're responding well to texts, use texts. Everybody has their own different communication preference. Generally speaking, it's driven by age and access or comfort with technology. So as businesses, we tend to focus on the lowest common denominator channel, the one that everybody has access to, the one that's cheap and the one that's easy to use. And so for most of us here, that ends up being email. Because as I said, everybody has it. It's easy to create, it's easy to personalize, which we know is important. It's cheap. You've probably sent out, or your dealership has hundreds or thousands of these emails already today to your customers. A lot of you probably registered for this webinar via an email. And that's what's causing part of the problem. The average American is receiving 122 of these personal emails every single day. I mean, it's the new junk mail. No one can get that many and read them all, review them, and then act on them. We read some of them. Maybe it's a snappy subject line, or more likely, and what we're going to talk about is maybe it's because they have an actual real relationship with the person who's sending it. Every time I look at this, I see that guy on the far left. I just hope that that's not you when you're reading my emails. So to answer the question from earlier on, the best form of communication is the one that your customer responds to and uses. It's not about what's easiest for us. It's about what's easiest for our customers to use, because that, when we use it, is going to get us the biggest return. So how do you know? How do you identify and then use what your customer's preferred communication method is? A couple different ways. You can use your CRM to track customer responses and log their preferences. And that's just based on how did they initially reach out to you. When your salesperson communicates, how do they communicate back? Are they more responsive via text, or are they more responsive via phone call? When you know that, log it. At the end, if you haven't figured it out yet, just ask. Ask at the end of the sale. And the easiest way to set this up is, as you close your deal, set up your first service appointment. And when you set it up, ask your customer, how would you like me to remind you? Text, email, phone, mailer, whatever it is, log it and use that method. What about your current customers, though? The ones that already exist in your CRM, and for whatever reason we haven't logged it, we don't know. I'm going to recommend that you start just by segmenting by age. There are a lot of generational differences in communications preferences, and these are all general. This isn't perfect, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that everyone fits into these buckets and will communicate this way with you. They won't. But it's a good place to start, and by starting here, you can start to identify what works for you. So we look at these individual groups of customers, by age, who are going to realistically be purchasing from you. We've got our baby boomers and the maturists, I think they're called, the elderly. We have they're still very receptive to phone calls or reminders in the mail even, but we are starting to run into many who are absolutely proficient with email. I mean, they were prominently in the workforce when it first became a big deal. But even text messages, there's some text message adoption there. With your Gen Xers, 35 to 49 years old, email still predominant, but absolutely have adopted text and now some social. With that age group, social is still primarily Facebook for them. We say social as if it's all just one thing and they're all the same, and they're not. Different groups of people use different social media, and particularly Facebook. If you're 35 and female or older, that's your channel. It's Facebook. The millennial group, which we've been talking about them for a while, but it's recently that they've started to become a more significant economic driver as they've aged and they get jobs that pay. It's pretty critical that we start to pay more attention to them now. Texting, absolutely, and social, but it's beyond Facebook again. It's the messaging applications, it's Snapchat, it's Instagram, and to a lesser extent Twitter, but experimentation here is pretty key. We have the other generation, Gen Z, up here. We'll have to start looking at that and listening, but realistically right now they're not buying cars from you, so I don't think you have to worry too much. But certainly be experimenting and keep up to date with what's coming out, because it's constantly changing. So experiment with these starting places. And the best advice I can give you here is to be where your audience is and not where you want them to be. They don't care if you prefer email or if you want to get them on the phone. They're going to use the channel that they want. And if that's messaging, if that's texting, that's what they're going to use. And we either adapt to that or we lose them as customers. So after you've had a chance to build out some of those segments and start playing around with what channel your customers respond to, it's time to get the timing right. And we're going to talk about best timing in terms of frequency, how often you're sending, and the best actual times of day to send out different messages. So none of what the rest we're going to talk about, channel or message, none of it matters if the timing is off. If you send too frequently, your customers get annoyed, or they'll tune out, or worse, they'll opt out. If you send out too rarely, too infrequently, it just looks like random noise. Like you don't really know anything about them, that you're just broadcasting stuff out there to anyone who will listen. And if you send something at totally the wrong or inappropriate time, like a service reminder when they're not due for service, it's just confusing. And a confused customer is one of the worst things you can have. So when figuring out timing long-term, start by associating your dealership with customer milestones. So that as a customer thinks about you, or rather the milestone, thinking about you becomes a habit. So there are a few ways to do this. You can start by associating your timing with the vehicle. So you've got your maintenance reminders, or new upgrade offers based off of their equity position, your lease re-ups, or recall notifications as they happen. These are really easy places to start, and they are always relevant to the recipient, so you don't have to worry too much about, oh shoot, am I annoying this person with something they don't care about? A maintenance reminder is always going to be relevant. In this category, consider seasonal reminders too. If you can get customers to think about you in conjunction with the change in the season, that's huge. So think about something to the effect of, your customers thinking, oh, fall's here, I need to go to my dealership and change my wipers. Just like they would think, oh, fall's here, I need to go to the hardware store and pick up lawn bags and rakes. You want things like that to just be linked within your customer's mind. And you can do that not just with reminders specific to the vehicle, but with the person too. Birthday greetings are, I think, one of the best examples of this. They're easy to execute, and they are meaningful to people. You can treat them like real people and not just a sales opportunity. You can do that with holiday greetings or car anniversaries too. The example I really like to use here, my birthday's in June, and there is a local restaurant chain here, Houlihan's, that every year, a week before my birthday, they send me a free entree. And they have done this with such consistency that the two events are just permanently linked in my head. My birthday's coming up, so my wife and I are going to go to that restaurant at some point and eat that free entree. And it would be jarring and alarming to me if they didn't send it to me for some reason. And that's what you want. You want people to link you with these fun, exciting, and meaningful times in their lives. And if you can do that on a regular basis, it's very easy to stay top of mind. So how often do you need to do this to stay top of mind? I would start with once a month. We're not Target, we're not Walmart, we're not a grocery store. We're not places that people need to go with that kind of regularity. Remember again, marketing should be for our consumers a personal service. So honestly ask, how often do they really need to hear from us? At the same time, if you do have relevant content, if it is timely, don't be afraid to send it out. It takes up to 3 touches per week before customers start to be disengaged with a brand. This gives you a lot more flexibility than I think a lot of dealerships really realize they have. I worked with a lot that are very concerned if they've sent somebody something more than once a week. If you're focusing on relevancy and timeliness, you don't need to worry as much about that. You have more leeway when you're relevant. So if your customer happens to need a birthday greeting and a service reminder in the same week, go ahead and send both of them. They're both completely relevant to the customer. So focus on getting that relevancy down, and the timeliness is going to follow. So that was frequency. I want to talk a little bit about literally the time of day. I have been asked this question, when should I send my email? Probably more than anything else. And for many years, the answer was, oh, you send it at 7 a.m. on a Tuesday, and everybody's going to read it, and you're going to have a wine out your door the next day. The answer to this has changed pretty dramatically over the last couple of years because customers have changed. So we used to have the ability to check messages, via a phone or email or social when we were in front of our computers. So we had to rely on computer access. We have a computer in our pocket now, so we can check it anywhere. We check when we're watching TV in the evenings. We check when we're out to dinner with our friends. We check in the bathroom. There is no sacred place anymore that's free from this. So as a result, it starts to become less about when you send and more about what it is you're sending. So what we've found is that emails that are sent between 12 and 4 p.m., those get the most eyeballs. They get the high open rates. They're read. But those sent early in the morning between 6 and 8, and those in the evening between 8 and 11, or we've actually seen it as late as midnight, those are the ones that get the follow-through, the engagement. So you'll get your clicks. You'll get your responses. So it starts to become a matter of what do you want out of your email. If it's purely informative about your newsletter or what you're doing in the community or a recall notification, and you just need somebody to read it, 12 to 4. If you need it to act, so you need someone to schedule their service appointment or schedule a test drive, in the afternoon is the best time to do it. And we've seen this carry over into the actual days of the week then too. So again, it's not what you're it's not when you're sending, it's when. I'll try that one more time. It's what you're sending rather than when. If it's an educational email that just needs to be read, send it earlier in the week. An actionable email like those service appointments, send them later. It's because as people enter the week, they're looking to be just productive. They're not looking to make these decisions based off of emails that aren't going to affect them until later. So the recommendation here is your newsletters, your information about vehicles, send that stuff early on, and then you can follow up with the call to action later on in the week. Get your appointments scheduled for service. It's a nice cadence that you can set up here, and you'll see these results. I think pretty quickly. That your read rates will spike earlier on, and your actionable calls to action, your click-throughs are going to spike later on in the week. And this actually does include Saturday. Used to be, I think, that people were afraid to send emails on Saturday, but anymore we actually see that Saturdays have very high click rates, and Tuesdays have a lot of read rates. So it comes down to what you want your customer to do. So let's go into the right message a little bit. People are very sensitive to just being considered another sale. So if every message that you send out is about your business or what you want them to do or making an appointment with you, it becomes clear very quickly that it is just about you, and you'll start to lose your customers' trust. If you fail to tailor those communications and personalize them, you'll come off as insincere because it shows that you don't really know them. So if we want to build a genuine, real relationship with our customers, you need to be genuinely interested in who they are. What do they like? What do they do? What's meaningful to them? People like to do business with people who like and are interested in the things that they are. And consumers are so keyed in to this relevancy, this act of liking the same thing, that 41% of them have threatened to stop buying from companies that send irrelevant messages. We have dealt with over the years, clients who want to send sales promotions to people who have just purchased cars, because the logic was, well, they may know someone who's in the market and they may forward it. That remote possibility is not worth this kind of risk. because they know now that you're saying, it's not about you, it's about the sale. I want you to refer me for a sale. It's not a relevant message to them. A referral campaign or referral program is a completely different topic that we're not going to get into. But if that's what you want to do, then talk about that with your customers rather than sending them a sales promotion like that. The real message here is stop sending messages that don't apply or aren't relevant. At the same time, we acknowledge that your ultimate goal here is retention and profitability sales, not to grow a list of pen pals. So we need to be thoughtful with the type of messages that we're going to convey. What does that mix look like? There are really three basic types of messages that we can talk about sending to our customer base. We do have our sales promotions, absolutely. And for purposes of this presentation, think of this not just as a vehicle sales promotion. This can be service. It's anything designed to generate revenue for you. We have our informative messages, the ones that are just designed to communicate who you are and what you're about, and that you are about things that your customer likes. And then finally, the check-in, which is your opportunity to treat people as people, to see how they're doing. So we'll talk about these sales messages first. These are the maintenance reminders, your service discounts, or your warranty extension offers. A great opportunity here is a vehicle upgrade notification based on someone's equity position. These emails are designed to generate actions either right now or very soon. And you'll see customers start to engage with these because you've shown in your other communications that that you have a relationship, that you know them, and that you are like each other, that you have each other's best interest at heart. Channel we're seeing right now most utilized for these are email, because it is easy to send and it's easy to personalize. And a lot of these messages, like these offers based on equity, they're reliant on personalization and customization. We do, as an industry, need to move past that and find ways to personalize and customize communications beyond just email. For frequency, these are going to be triggered by usually events in your CRM. So your maintenance reminders, your equity mining, you pull that information into your CRM through your DMS and send out those customized offers. A word about that. I said earlier, I wanted dealerships to get away from blasting everyone with sales promotions, and that's only sort of true. What I really want is for us to get away from blasting everyone with the same sales promotion. Emails with a real concrete offer based on a customer's equity, that can be very powerful. We've got a 9 rooftop dealership group here that they send out about 30 targeted campaigns every month to different customer segments, and they do that through Target Pro, which is our equity mining tool. Their open rate on those emails, depending on the rooftop, ranges from 30 to 40%, which is absolutely huge for a sales email like this. The opt-out rates, it's low. It's a little less than 0.5%. And what we're seeing with these, and this group is not unusual. I just pick them out because I happened to be working with them the other day. But 40% of those leads that they get from those emails convert to sales. So it is a quick and efficient way to reach a lot of people with a highly personalized and relevant offer that they can react to. So done right, it can still be a very powerful channel. Informative messages. So these are going to spotlight your dealership's your local community involvement, or you're going to start to call attention to safety awards for the model that the customer owns, or when it does happen, a recall notification. This is news or information that is relevant to the recipient. I actually think these are by far the hardest to come up with, and I think require the most creativity in terms of content and channel. So So pictures go a really long way here. I think where we've struggled historically is, oh God, who has the time to write all this stuff? You don't have to necessarily. Pictures, as they say, are and always have been worth 1,000 words, and it takes a lot less time to take one. So if you're running a charity drive or you're sponsoring, a Little League team, whatever you're doing that's involved, or take photos and get them up. Get them up on your social media channels. Send them in your email newsletter. Photos that show how you relate to people is a very effective way to humanize who you are and to show the people that you support. Instagram is a great tool for this as well. Show photos of your vehicles being used by the people who buy them. So when you first sell that vehicle, get a photo of the happy people buying it. It's an easy way of showing your audience that these are people also happy with us, also happy with our vehicles and our service and what we do, and they're just like you. Finally, the check-ins. So these are your birthday greetings, your holiday wishes, congratulations on babies or marriage. They're casual. They're just these personal touch points that help take your relationship beyond just a transaction, just a sale. These kinds of communications are going to be driven by events in your customers' lives. And the challenge with these, it's not what to say, because that's pretty easy. It's happy birthday. It's how to find out it's happening. So how do you do this? Birthday and car anniversaries and happy holidays, that stuff's easy. But how do you know if your customer's having a baby or getting married? It's not easy. For most of us, it is not practical to stalk Facebook, stalk Instagram for news about pregnancies or weddings, and can come off as creepy. But you don't have to stalk everyone. What you can do is use your website monitoring tools or your CRM triggers to start to identify customers displaying some kind of behavioral change. So if you have customers who are looking at upgrading the size of their vehicle to larger sedans, to minivans, to an SUV, when you're putting together the newsletter that you've built for that segment, drop in some information on safety ratings or on car seat accessibility. Drop those into your newsletters and start to pay attention to who clicks on them. Once you know that, and you can start to zero in on who's really interested in that type of material, that gives you the opportunity to start digging in a little bit deeper. I worked with a Mazda dealership in the Northeast who really excelled at this. They would just put together a pretty standard newsletter email layout, and they would populate it with articles or news information that was relevant to the different segments that they put together. And they had one specific to people that they suspected were in the process of starting a family. And so they would populate it with articles on those safety ratings. And what they would see that with these different newsletter segments, their readership on those jumped up to 40%, and this was after just a few months. So they had a high level of engagement with a variety of different groups of customers because they demonstrated that we actually care about what you might be interested in and are showing you useful, relevant information. So when you're doing all of these and you're putting all these different types of communications together, what you're going to end up with is a pretty healthy mix of topics. And like any real relationship, you don't really talk about just one thing. And that's really the goal here, is for this communication plan to mimic an actual relationship. So you build your relationships with your customers on these informative messages and these check-ins, and then you start to cash in on that relationship with your sales promotions. But you can't start there. You have to build that foundation, build that trust, build that interest first. So I mentioned before that there's a pretty big divide in who wants to hear what from you. Everybody is different, and I can say, lump people in by generation, and maybe that's a starting point, but everyone's an individual. Nobody's necessarily a perfect stereotype. So, but you do have to start somewhere. So as you segment these groups and decide what to send, when you take a look at your baby boomers, they're ready at this point to reap the rewards of all these years of hard work. Show them what that looks like. They've put in the hours, and perhaps they've put off some of the experiences and some of the vacations and the luxuries that some of the other generations experienced earlier. Show it what it looks like now, that they're ready to relax and have fun. Again, pictures go a long way here. Gen Xers, on the other hand, they love practicality, and they truly value being informed. It's important to them that they make their own decisions based on the information presented and not have someone tell them for them. So whether your vehicles are winning safety awards, or your dealership is winning an award of some kind, or you're having a recall, make sure they know about it and let them make the call, make the decision. Keep them informed. Particularly in the instance of that recall, make sure they hear it from you first and not from someone else. It's a highly skeptical and cynical generation, so it's important that they hear that stuff from you. Be relevant, be transparent. The millennial group, which again is becoming a huge driver, they love the concept of social responsibility. It's very important to them that you be about more than a sale, that your business be purposeful in how it interacts with its community. So show what's your brand doing, what's your dealership doing to make things better around you, or to engage with those around you. This topic of what content, what do you put in these communications is enormous, and honestly could be, and maybe should be, a webinar by itself. But the major tips here are: be committed. Once you start, particularly with social, it's not enough just to have a page. You have to be active on it. You have to post regularly, and you have to engage with the people who engage with you. It is a dialogue. That's why it's called social media. So be willing and be ready to talk with people if they respond. Be creative. Use video. Use photos. Use links out to other articles. You don't have to necessarily write all this stuff. Content generation is tough if it's just you and a word processor and you're just trying to write. So don't. Take advantage of stuff that's already out there. Curate it and send it to people who care. When you do that and you experiment with it and you be creative, you will start to find what resonates for your specific audience. And that, I think, is the real takeaway here. Sure, segment by generation, it's a great place to start, but again, everybody's an individual. Every market's a little bit different. Find out what resonates with your specific customers. The reason we want to do this, and I'm going to go a little off presentation here. I was reading a book by a guy named Brian Solis the other day. Great innovator and leader in the marketing industry, and he talked about Procter & Gamble came up with what they called moments of truth years ago. They came up with the first moment of truth and the second moment of truth. The first moment is when your customer first interacts with your product, whatever it is. If it's something on a store shelf, it's when they first grab it and touch it and are sold on it, essentially. For us, for dealerships, it may be a set test drive, or maybe it's just seeing that vehicle in the first place. It's that moment when they're in it, they're experiencing it, and they say, yes, this is what I want. The second moment of truth is when they're home. And in our industry, it's when that honeymoon is worn off. It's not new. It's just their car now. Does it continue to delight and provide them that same level of experience as it did when they first drove it? And it's that second moment. It's that long-term relationship and experience that determines whether or not we're going to retain those customers, whether or not they're going to come back. So that's the first and second moment. What this guy, Brian Solis, was writing about was a book that Google published a few years back where they took that and said there's actually three. There's now a zero moment of truth. That's when your customers make the decision to research or Google your product, where they basically said, yep, I am now interested enough that I'm going to go down the road of buying it. And it's obviously become hugely important. It's a serious step towards buying a car in the digital age. But what they find during that zero moment, what they're researching, what they're being exposed to, is your current customer's second moment of truth. So as your current customers experience your product, experience their relationship with you, and they're talking about it on social media, and they're referring you, and they're rating you, that's what your future customers are seeing during their zero moment of truth. So it's that loop, that cycle that we're after. We're trying to build a relationship with your customers so that they are influencing your future customers. I went a little off track here, but I think it's an important message that this is not just about retention. It is about that, but it's about how those people influence everyone else in the social era. All right, now back to our regularly scheduled slides. So if you do these things right, you're going to start to reap all the benefits of a relationship. You're going to start to see more and better online reviews. You're going to see an increased social following, and that's going to lead to increased referrals with you. As we mentioned before, you'll see a higher customer lifetime value, so higher profit through both service and repeat purchases. Your overall revenue and generally profit is going to increase. Initially, that'll be primarily driven by service, but then those repeat sales come later. So we've got at this point a good idea of how to determine our channel, general timing that we're going to need to start with, and the types of messages we can use. So you have enough info now to start building your communication plan. Like any good plan, it does need to be flexible, and it needs to be something you can actually execute. A plan is only as good as its execution. So start small if you need to, and do it properly, do it right, make sure it's within your capability before expanding to something that is a stretch. We see that most communications plans that are the most effective are driven through your CRM. Your CRM is going to house so much of the data that you're going to use to drive these, so it's a good place to start. It's a customer relationship management system after all, so that's the whole point, is that it should help you build and manage these relationships. CRM is good at facilitating communications, and so our clients do see an average ROI of $8.71 for every dollar they spend on CRM when they use it to run these plans. Your CRM is going to help you track your demographics, so your preferences, your communication preferences, your age, your gender, where physically they're at, all these things that are going to help you begin to segment your customers. But it's also going to track your milestones. Where are they in terms of their maintenance schedule? What's their relationship status or their birthday? When do they buy their car, and when are they ready to renew the lease? So you'll use it to segment your audience, and you'll use it to determine when to send those different segments their messages. So you'll use it to figure out your timing. Those of you who have seen some of my previous webinars are going to be, I think, very familiar with these steps by now. It's because it's a process I believe in, and it's a process I know works. Start by segmenting your customer base. Start with those generational demographics if you need to, if you don't already know how people want to communicate. Then move on to creating and cultivating your content library for each individual group. Again, this is the hardest step, I know, but it can be the most fun. And it is, out of all of these, the single biggest opportunity you have to really stand out from the competition by providing something that is unique, is authentic, and is relevant. Then move on to setting what your distribution schedule looks like. So this realistically is going to mean finding and sticking to a date for any regular monthly communications like a newsletter, or it's going to mean setting up the rules and triggers that automate communications run through your CRM. At what point do you send a service reminder out? How far in advance of somebody hitting a mileage, or how far in advance of a lease renewal? Also, as you send these out, set up tasks for your salespeople or your BDC, or even your sales agents or service reps, to follow up with your most engaged or profitable audiences. You'll start to see over time that the people who engage with your emails and your newsletters and your social postings are going to be your most profitable segment. Every other industry refers to them as your super users. Focus a lot of time on these people, not just because they're profitable, but because their willingness to talk about you and refer you to others is much higher. Spend the most time with your best customers. Finally, this step is, I think, more critical than it's ever been. Review your results and make changes based on them. That's how you're going to really fine-tune what your content is, who you're sending it to, and at what time. And as I mentioned earlier, customers are expecting more and more and more, and they're expecting it rapidly. So if you don't refine, if you don't adjust to make it better, you're not just standing still, you will fall behind. So we, for better or for worse, are just living in this state of constant improvement just to stay the same. So here's just a quick example of what a year's worth of post-sale communications could look like for the average buyer. It is generic, but it's not necessarily meant to give you, a concrete version of this is the plan, stick to this, but to give you some ideas of how simple it can be, where you send your new car follow-up and make sure people are still happy with their car. Try to influence that second moment of truth where they're experiencing their car outside of the dealership. They're learning things about it maybe they didn't notice, but make sure they're still happy. Make sure they still really delight in that car. You'll see in here we do have like Little League team updates or notifications about your charity drive during the holiday. These are ways for you to show that you care about the same things your customers care about. We have some seasonal promotions in there, again, to tie in with people this time of change or time of events, to tie it back to your dealership. You also see towards the end we've got a maintenance reminder with a coupon. We call that out specifically because at this point, if it's been this long and they haven't brought their vehicle back for service, it means they're bringing it back somewhere else. So at that point, let's see what we can do to get them back in, because we might be in jeopardy of losing them. Although the idea here is that if you're touching base this often and with this much relevant information, that you don't have that problem. So again, it's a little generic, but it's not complicated. And it's material you can use in direct communications, and you absolutely can and should be using it in social channels. And at the end of all of this, you should be staying in front of your customers regularly after the sale and building these long-term relationships. And that's what's going to lead you to higher retention, and that's going to lead you to greater profit and revenue out of your customers. So I hope everybody today has found this informative, and I'll be perfectly happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Brian. That was a great presentation. We do have some questions here. And everybody that's on the call right now, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in. We've got a few. We've got a few here to get started with. Brian, who is the person to send out these communications? It's not in my budget to make a hire.
Okay. So if you don't have the budget right now to make the hire, hopefully we have some kind of marketing professional or communications professional that maybe is sending out your current campaigns and can start to add this to their workload. If not, Kind of an out-of-the-box solution is, if you got a BDC, maybe task one of your reps or each one of your reps with a different customer segment, and have them kind of specialize in putting together some content for those groups and sending them out. That's also a good way to start to get a feel for who's responding and who's engaged with you. The idea is that you can prove out that, no, this makes a huge difference, and it will make an even better one if we can get a dedicated employee to work on this stuff.
All right. Our next question, I use VinSolutions and love it. I have customers that will respond to text only. During the sales process, this worked very well. How do you connect with them after the sale using Vin?
So again, I would look at tasking your individuals. Text is kind of fun and kind of hard in that obviously there are rules and people have to opt in to receive certain messages. But in Vin, you can start by looking at using some generic assignment rules, some generic tasks. Have your BDC or your salespeople set themselves to once every week for an hour, or set tasks on specific customer records to text them a happy birthday or happy car anniversary, or hey, check out this whatever post on social media that I like. But there are some generic tasks that you can set. And what we'll also want to do, because this is a fairly, I think, specific question, we can loop in your performance manager to find out the best way for your specific situation how to set those up. If it is tasking one person to just kind of roll through this week's birthdays, or you task each individual salesperson to hit their specific customer birthdays, if that makes sense. A question that specific is going to come down to how do you want to distribute that work.
All right. Sometimes I'm nervous that my customers will think I'm annoying them if I email them too often. How can I gauge whether or not they're bothered by our communications?
Few different ways to do that depending on the channel. So we'll start with email because it's the one everyone's most familiar with. When you start sending these out, if you start to see a dip in your read rate, that's a pretty good indication that either A, it's too much, or B, nobody cares. So ideally, it's just too much and you just need to back off. But if you do that and the read rates are high but your click rates are low, that's an indication that maybe the content's just not that great, which is a separate issue. But it's still better to know than not. With social, different engagement metrics. So if you first start posting this stuff and you're getting likes and you're getting comments and shares or views, and then that drops off, but the type of content you're showing hasn't changed, you're just doing it too much. Vice versa, if your content has changed and you see a dip in likes and comments and posts, okay, that was a misstep with the content. So if you can, early on, identify what the pattern or trend is, and then just note what did you change when that trend changes. If you change the content, maybe your content's bad. If you increase your frequency, then back off a little bit.
All right. Our next question is, can you talk about bulk emails through your CRM? Is there still a problem with ISP blacklisted? And do you know what is the overall average open rate with your CRM program?
Sure. I can talk about both of those. We do not have a problem with ISP blacklisting. As far as distribution goes, there is actually a tool called Distributions. I highly recommend that you focus on either the Campaigns tool instead, which does a better job of segmenting your customers based on more narrowly defined filters, or the Target Pro tool, which basically does an even better job of that. It rolls in equity. It rolls in some website behavior as well that the Campaigns tool does not have. And what's great about both of those is you are rapidly able to deploy information to smaller groups. Because really what we want is a lot of finely tuned kind of micro campaigns to different groups of customers. So you're still reaching everybody, you're just reaching with different people. I think the second part of that question was average read rates, I think. So that one's hard because it does come down to how you're using the tool. But what I can say is the Target Pro emails, we see read rates of those averaging around 30%, whereas larger blasts to 20, 30,000 people, the read rates on those are significantly lower, 15 to 20%. It varies widely depending on what's being sent out. I mentioned that dealership, that Mazda dealership, their newsletter hits 6,000, 7,000 people, but it's still a read rate of 40%. It's just they've done such a good job of finally honing their content. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. I'm not trying to be vague. It's just it's a wide range. So we see people on the far end, the 15%. We see people on the 30, 40%. It depends on which tool and how exactly you're using it.
All right. Our next question, Brian, is in your opinion, what is the biggest risk if we only use email in our dealership?
Oh, okay. Well, the biggest risk with only using email is that you're missing out on everyone who doesn't respond well to email. It's not, I guess, maybe a great answer. Here's one that's maybe a little more specific. So look at Gmail specifically. Anyone who uses Gmail is kind enough to filter out our emails based on what they are. So we have our updates tab, we have our promotions tab, we have our finance tab. So Gmail has decided for us what we would like to see. That's really cool for a consumer and pretty terrible for a marketer. So when you use email, unless you have just a stellar relationship with customers, which you might, but maybe not when we first start out with this, those emails are not going to land necessarily in the primary inbox. Some consumers are just better at others at checking the promo tab. Some just don't care. So you're going to miss out with Gmail only, everyone who doesn't check that updates tab. That's not to say all the people who just don't respond well to email generally. So to limit yourself to one channel is basically deliberately saying, I don't care about or care about reaching anyone who doesn't use email. And I don't really think that's what we want to say. I don't think that's true. Now, maybe your particular market does respond well to email. I would say that's very lucky and very fortunate for you, because I don't believe that long term that's going to be a solution that we can only use that one channel.
All right. Well, Brian, it looks like that's the end of our questions. Everybody, this is Brian Ankney with Auto Success again. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to join us today. And if you liked what you saw and you'd like to share this with somebody else in the dealership, I have recorded this webinar, and then you can see Brian's email address on the screen. Just send him an email, and if there's someone else that you would like to see this webinar, he'll send you a link where they can watch it on YouTube. I will also be posting this to the group Auto Success webinars on Facebook that I mentioned earlier. Just type Auto Success webinars into the search bar on Facebook. It'll bring up the group, and you can see it there. Brian, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today before we let them go? No, I just really appreciate the opportunity. I think these are a ton of fun, and I really like sharing what we as an industry and those organizations have learned about this stuff with everyone. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Great. Well, everybody, and for those of you that are watching this on a mobile device and might be driving or you're out on the lot or wherever you might be, you will get a thank you email for attending. That'll come from me. And if you would like Brian's information, if you would like to reach out to Brian and you can't write down his email address right now, just shoot me just reply and I'll get you that information. You can do the same with the video. So yeah, I would like to thank everyone for coming. If you liked what you saw today, please share Auto Success webinars with the other people in your dealership. I hope to see you all again on a future webinar, and have a great afternoon.